I'm Beth Ma. I've been working with adult numeracy students and teachers for almost 30 years now. My main interest is designing hands-on learning activities. Hands-on learning activities that encourage students to interact in pairs and small groups about numeracy concepts. You may ask why. There are several reasons. Traditionally, in school, maths has been taught as a silent, individual activity. In teaching adults, I'm working to change that by promoting more collaborative interactions between learners. First, I want to engage learners in talking and sharing ideas. Their learning's then a much more social experience rather than that lonely, isolated one. And this helps alleviate the anxiety that many adults bring with them to maths or numeracy classes. Secondly, interactive learning involves students in speaking and using the language of numeracy. This helps them clarify meaning. Thirdly, all adults have some maths-related knowledge that they bring to the class. They buy things, they handle money, they make things, they gamble or they play darts, they use maps, plans and diagrams. When you provide an opportunity for students to collaborate on structured tasks, all of this knowledge is available to the group for sharing. This series was filmed in Perth, Western Australia at a professional development workshop for teachers working with adult students. This first video deals with maths anxiety. Maths anxiety is an important place to start because huge numbers of adult students have such negative feelings towards their past maths learning. So many people approach maths with feelings of fear and dread. I want teachers to be aware of that so they can empathise with students and try and make adult numeracy classes very different from maths at school. We started the workshop with an awareness exercise. The group was given these questions, or prompts really, and asked to jot down their initial responses individually. I always do some version of this. I give participants time to have a think and remember their own maths learning experiences and feelings. Then they share them in small groups. Okay, can we just share some of what you've been talking about? Let's start with the memories of maths. Has anything stood out at any of the tables? What about the back table? Yeah?
Reciting times tables.
Reciting, oh yes.
I've never forgotten them, ever.
What I remember most about maths at school.
Seems like all of our maths teachers, despite their, style, their poor style or their mono style, we all went through the same experience of talk and some of us being okay with that and others not.
We all have different learning styles indeed, yeah. Which is what that thing about reciting tables is. There's other theories that visual people didn't do so well reciting and they needed other ways.
Different treatment of students, Beth. You know, if you were the student who was really good and you asked a question, the teacher would stop and answer you. But if you were the student who kind of always got it wrong or whatever, you'd be told to pay attention. You know, so I think there was a different validity put on different students' questions.
All the subjects that we learn at school, maths is always, it's got a right answer and that's it, it's got one answer, so you've got to know your formulas to get that answer. Whereas in your English and your history, you can much more opinionated subjects, but so your maths teacher I found at school, if you were good at maths, they like you. Because you can do it. It reflects them being a good teacher.
So that takes us to maybe maths teachers. So most of them were
Old men.
old.
I did put it down, but something that's just struck me is that I'm not convinced my maths teachers were very good at making a link between what you're doing in the classroom and what you might do with that.
The debrief discussion produced quite a lot of laughter, particularly a memory of grey cardigans, the stereotypical maths teacher's uniform. We all roared laughing at that, But although it was really funny, I think there's more to it than just the clothes, unfortunately. I think it probably represents a feeling of greyness that surrounds many adults' memories of maths classes. That's really sad. This activity generates lots of shared stories, memories and fears. It's good to get it in the open because maths anxiety is a very real factor for both learners and for teachers who aren't maths specialists. The participants' memories and reflections always produce a list of factors I want to cover in the workshop. The last question or prompt, a good numeracy teacher, allows the teachers to come up with a list of practices they'd like to adopt as adult numeracy teachers. This means we finish the discussion on a positive note. I think that is, well, all of that's important, but praising people and remembering to praise and remembering that their confidence is what's going to drive their learning in the end. So helping them to find the thing that makes them confident and remembering that this is the struggle that we're helping them with is a really important thing. But what we did get is some of those feelings from intelligent people in this room of nervousness and anxiety. And if you read the literature and if you do any research about maths teaching and people's experience of maths teaching, it's going to come across that traditional teaching has been a silent classroom with people forced to compete with each other to be better rather than cooperate. A lot of repetitive examples of the same thing, whether it was meaningful or not was not the point. It was repetitive, not meaningful. Most students wouldn't have a clue why they were doing those things and usually got lost somewhere along the line because of the abstract nature of mathematics. So this is the background from which so many of the students in TAFE are coming. The first person that wrote about was Sheila Tobias, who was American, and she described it as this feeling of panic and helplessness and mental disorganisation, the fuzzy brain that arise among people when they're required to solve a mathematical problem. There's a thing that I'll talk a bit more about later called what people now call is invisible numeracy. The numeracy that we don't realise we have. So when you talk to people and you say, well, how do you feel about maths? If you're me and you've spent your life being a maths teacher and going out and meeting people in the world and seeing them take a step backwards when you say you're a maths teacher, you understand that there are strong feelings. When you have enough of these conversations, you find out they're all coming from different places. Some people are talking about Year 12 calculus. Some people are talking about primary school. They all call it maths, but they're all talking about something really different. And the same anxiety is there, only for some people it started way, way, way back. But everyone calls it maths and they're all got strong feelings about it. And so to everyone, maths is the thing they can't do. It's not all those things and all those years of things they can do, it's the point where it started to get too difficult. The point where they started to fail is lodged in their brain as that is maths. For most of your students, the points where things started to go wrong are probably going to be fractions or long division or, well for me, speed tests at school, tables races, mental, and teachers with blackboard rulers and hands on heads right now, put your hands back on your head. That's one of the things that went very wrong for me. And for a lot of other people, it's algebra. So you say, what maths, what do you remember that's the terrible thing? It'll be those things. And if they come into bridging courses, these will be the first things that they want to address because these are the things that went wrong for them. You can't ignore maths anxiety. It can cause awful things like headaches, people getting really sick. I started a maths class once in a neighbourhood centre and the woman started to get a migraine and said it was because of the check cloth on the table, but it wasn't the check cloth on the table. She was doing maths and she suddenly started to feel really ill. And lots of stories about people One teacher was saying that she was in a class and she walked up behind the student who suddenly started to shake all over. And they sort of talked about it for a while and suddenly realised she had black from head to foot on, the teacher, and suddenly it felt like one of the nuns had come up behind the student and she just started to shake all over. Literacy teachers often don't come to professional development when it's numeracy because they suddenly feel sick that day. They don't realise why they're feeling sick, and others will come and say, I had a headache but I forced myself to come. Things like that. So it can happen at all sorts of different levels. But it can cause students to avoid numeracy classes or act up in numeracy classes. And for most of us, or most of us that have thought about that, think that it is strongly associated with this lack of meaning in school. What people talked about, it didn't mean anything, I couldn't see why we were doing it, and never understanding the purpose of anything we did. So it's lots of rules and formula that don't have any meaning whatsoever. One of the favourites being the rule for dividing fractions. Turn it upside down and multiply it. Why? Doesn't matter, just do it. That's the rule. People have said to me, and I think it's true, that it's not your fault if you don't know another way to teach maths because we've all been taught one particular way. Because for years in secondary schools I was searching for other ways and not finding them. So rather than being all the things we talked about it before, we don't want to make it abstract, we want to make it connected to something. We want to make it as visual as we can. We want to make it hands-on, and something I'm going to talk a lot about, linked to language. And not silent and competitive like it was in school, but cooperative and relying very much rich in interaction and discussion. The videos to follow will introduce some structures or models of activities that promote interaction and discussion in numeracy classes. We hope that by demonstrating these really simple structures, we can encourage teachers to introduce new methods into their teaching repertoire. Although the best way to learn about these activities is to participate in them with others during professional development workshops, this is not always possible, especially for teachers who are located a long way from major cities. The videos in this series are another means for teachers to see the activities in action. This series was filmed in Perth, Western Australia at a professional development workshop for teachers working with adult students. You will observe workshop participants using activities designed for students. The instructions and the materials for all of these activities can be downloaded from the Velbeck website.
Authorised by the Government of Western Australia, Perth.